Thank you, Mark. That was such a great conversation. So I was hoping that you guys spoke about how each of your voiceover artists approached it slightly differently in a performative sense, but I wanted to know how did you do the logistic of that? Obviously, you had written all of the script, but did you actually sort of have any sort of directing intervention, or was it really about trying to have everyone do a performance that was very much their own?
Yeah, I mean, we made this film for no money, so we couldn't spend days and days with Kerry and the different voiceover artists, you know. So it had to be in a recording studio for 2 or 3 hours, or in a home. So I gave some suggestions, you know, to keep it small and not shout. And of course, there are lots of unusual names, and so I helped with pronunciations. But these are such experienced actors, and they needed almost nothing from me. What I did was I numbered the pages in case we dropped our pages, and that was about it. And none of the actors needed much direction at all.
Because what's quite wonderful is, as you know, as the voices change, as a viewer, you're kind of like, oh, and you get it. But there's this incredible evenness, which I guess is, you know, a lot to do with the fact that you've written the whole script. But even, you know, the tempo of their dialogue, after a while, it has this incredible rhythm that really syncs up between all of those performances.
Yeah. And because, again, we had no money, we had to cut first. So we had edited the picture, and so we couldn't change the picture. And so that was a key thing for me when I was sitting. I remember sitting in India with the wonderful Sharmila Tagore, and we were holding hands as she read, and occasionally I would ask her to go a little faster, because if the voiceover was too slow, we'd need to stretch the film clips, and that we didn't have the time or the money to do that. So I knew the pacing it needed to be, and just had to keep an ear on that also. But what a joy working with these people, you know. I mean, it was fantastically fun. And after Jane Fonda did her bit in her home, she said, "What are you going to do now?" And I said, to be honest, I'm going to go to a bar and have a martini to celebrate the fact that I've just worked with Jane Fonda. And Jane Fonda said, "Can I come too?"
Oh my God.
It was a lot of fun.
I need to have another martini celebration to celebrate having...
Well, the bar I had in mind was like a total cheap dive bar worth $5. I said, you know, it's like a really cheap bar. And she said, well, of course.
But I mean, just, you know, I mean, all of your artists in this film are so incredible. The people doing your voiceover work, the people that you're speaking of in the film. And I wonder, you know, obviously making the film on, you know, The Smell of an Oily Rag, you weren't commissioned. It wasn't a project that someone brought to you and said, okay. So obviously there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of logistic challenge there, but what freedom did you have as a result of not being commissioned? Was there things that you just couldn't have done otherwise?
That's the key question, Christy. You know, I had total freedom, you know, because nobody, well, it could have been, at one point it was going to be 16 hours and then 12 hours. So I could decide, make key creative decisions, like this is not going to be about the lives of these women. It's going to be about their work. It's not going to talk about them as victims. It's going to talk about them as artists, etc. So I was free to make all those choices, and really to look at lots and lots of filmmakers who are not in the conversation, from Bulgaria, from Romania, from Ukraine, from Iran, etc. Total liberty. And I think if we had been commissioned by a television station or a arts foundation, then maybe they would have wanted more, I don't know, a more conventional approach where you do tell the story, the lives. You know, I always carry these photographs with me of all the
I wanted to ask you about these laminates, and
they traveled all around the world with me, you know, and they, you know, it was like I was chatting to them every night in a hotel room somewhere, you know, and that was exciting. It was a very pure creative process, just looking at the work. I respect all the other activist rhetoric about feminism in cinema, but for me, it was important in this little bit that I was doing to just look at them as filmmakers. Because I know loads of female filmmakers, and nearly all of them say, just treat me as a filmmaker. They're sick of being asked about to be a sort of voice for female filmmakers,
But I think that for me, that's such a refreshing aspect of the film. I like that, when it starts, you think, we're not, this thematic approach and this break from either chronology or biography is just, it's so freeing as an audience, because what it for me especially, and I'm sure lots of people have responded this way, it puts the films on their very own level playing field. It doesn't, yes, they're all directed by women, but the way you've clutched them together doesn't make them say, oh, well, you should watch this because it's made by a lady and that's the right thing to do. It frees the film entirely. And also some questions about choices, because obviously, you have a lot of things to choose from. I liked that there were moments where, as a viewer, especially we get to the dancing sequence at the end and we think, of course, we'll have the Beau Travail scene. And I love that you don't. So you're making lots of choices. So can you talk us through how you work with your editor? Because you've worked with your editor for on a number of films.
Yeah. Things like when you're doing a series of moments about dancing. One of the first films that comes to mind is the beautiful Beau Travail. But you want to be ahead of people. I'm in the entertainment business in some ways. And I want to give people the unexpected. As a viewer, I want to see something that I didn't expect. And to your question about editing, again, because we work with zero money, our editor got paid, but I didn't, for example, so I have to sit at my computer where I am now, and that desk there is the editing desk, and I just write the whole thing out in as much detail as possible, including ins and outs, and I had some people working with me, a great woman in London called Sonali Bhattacharya, and she was looking at the Indian and Pakistan films for me. And editor Timo was looking at at the German films because he speaks German, etc. So I had some help there, but it's really just doing what we call a paper edit, as precise a script document with all the information in it as possible, because there was no way we could rethink 2 years into editing and think, oh no, let's try another approach. That wasn't possible. So it's a lot of planning. I think I've shown this document before, but these are the themes of the film scribbled in my rubbish handwriting. And once they were scribbled, it stayed pretty close to that again. So you've got a structure. And one of the hardest things creatively in editing, as is finding a structure. And you can waste 6 months or a year looking for a structure for your film. But if you have the structure up front and it's solid, then you're free to really move fast.
I wanted to end on a question of the reception of the film, because when my first encounter with the film was at the Toronto Film Festival, and I saw it in that 4-hour, that first clutch that happened. And so you premiered that at the Venice Film Festival, is that correct?
Yeah. Yes.
And so obviously, and you and Kerry spoke about her seeing that 4-hour cut at the London Film Festival.
Yes.
What did you take away as a filmmaker and your team, a tiny team making this? Was it just this last energizing push you needed to, what does that do to be able to, you're right in the thick of this film, it's taken a very long time.
Yeah.
And you get a glimpse of an audience reception.
As you know, most filmmakers say that the first audience screening is horrible because you wince all the time. And so I didn't go to Toronto. I went to the Venice premiere, and I just winced the whole time at things that I thought were wrong, because to see something on a big screen, the pacing is different. So when we came back from Venice, we slackened it off a bit. We lengthened some of the clips, loosened the structure. I felt a bit banged over the head by that first cut. And so that little bit of loosening helped things. but it also, there were nice reactions to these screenings, and there were some tears afterwards and people saying, wow, I hadn't heard of Pinka Zhelyazkova, I haven't heard of Malvina Ursianu, and that really encouraged us. So from then it was another solid year's editing or something after that. But that bit, you know, when you're in an edit suite, you always think, oh, this is terrible. I always think that it's terrible. So you need to get out of the end of the edit tunnel into the light. And that was, those premieres were getting out into the light.
Well, I'm very excited. When we first decided to do our virtual cinema, and we were thinking about our sort of little dream list of films, this was a film that we all, my colleagues and I, desperately wanted, because I like that it's asking us to be curious and asking us to just reframe what we think we knew. But also I would like to give a shout out, and we will link to this, to the fantastic website. The website is this gem. It's a treasure chest of information, and it's a very generous act, this film. And I think I'd like to say thank you for that, because it's an incredibly generous act as a film and as a portal for us to all learn a lot more from.
Thank you so much, Christy, and we're so pleased you're showing it.
Great. Well, have a lovely day, and good luck with your next project. We are all waiting.
Can't wait to visit you in the flesh.
Yes.
In person.
In real. Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. It's really wonderful.